The board supports option 2, which aligns with the proposal received from the community groups, and we're asking to move the Matarangi open space land purchase into the must-have priority list in the LTP. The board feels it's very important to correct a historic wrong. I know that you've had a lot of speakers come and speak to you about that today, so I won't go over the history. We've worked with the local community trust groups and also with the Ratepayers Association, and we're very, very keen to see this resolved. Now, regardless of the outcome of the LTP process, we would really like to keep, this work and the work that has gone in place. We'd like to see that continue. Post LTP, not special option 2. With regard to the sale of land in Whangamata, the board supports option 1.
Can I ask, do you know the history of the land?
I do know a little about the history of the land, but I can sort of give you a bit of background about why the board supports option 1.
I've just had questions on the end, so we get our full 5 minutes from here. 15.
Let's just hear the submission and then you can ask your question after.
Well, I can just ask during it. I've seen it several times today.
All right, we'll go and ask.
I'm happy to answer.
Okay.
And we base that on precedent in terms of when this board has brought land as a ward, it has come from our local rates. When we have sold land that is district land, that money has gone back to.
We don't want to sell the land, but anyway.
Yeah, but so what the board feels that the Whangamata Community Board should be given the option to acquire the land at market value and to be funded from a local Whangamata rate. Okay.
The land's already there, but anyway, okay.
Thank you. With regard to the increasing cost of rubbish and recycling, the board is very keen, very anxious for a full review of the district-wide solid waste strategy and a method of service delivery to be undertaken. The 3 issues raised in the LTP consultation should be dealt with as part of that review. So we are asking that the council include in the LTP a commitment to prioritise a full review of district-wide solid waste in terms of strategy and method of delivery. With regards to summertime rubbish collections, the proceeding submission to prioritise review is accepted, then the level of service remain as it is until the completion of that review. Matarangi and Pauanui transfer stations, the board supports option 1, no change to the current level of service. With regards to the Monarchs at Whangapā and Opito Bay, as I said, the board is keen to see a solid waste review completed as a priority and that the level of service remain as is until the completion of that review. Looking at fees and charges and getting visitors and users to pay their fair share. The intent of option 1 is supported, but with a modification which is to investigate introducing new fees and charges that target visitors for the use of the facilities and services. And then looking at the proposed changes to current fees with regards to boat ramps, the board is submitting that the Quarry Point boat ramp, which is the boat ramp at Kuaotunu, be excluded from those listed for user charges. The reason being there has been no significant upgrade or infrastructure work completed there. The proposed changes with regards to our current fees and charges, the board feels that there is a priority for a full review of these facilities, the harbour facilities, and that also includes the commercial users and wharf fees and charges, and defer any charges until a full thorough review is completed. And so it's submitted that the proposed increases in the current fees and charges for harbour facilities be removed for the 2021-2022, so we can get that review in place and then introduce it all at once. In terms of CapEx, there are a couple of items, I'm not going to go through them all, in our priority list which we think could be removed. And then looking at our nice to haves, Robinson Road coastal hazard protection. The board is submitting that we would like to move funding of 215,000 to the 2021-2022 must-have priority list in the LTP. This work is considered a high priority. We've got some hutukau trees there that are currently under threat, and also the erosion is moving closer to the road. The Hahei wastewater and water extension. I've just looked at those two line items together. And the board would like to see this move to the must-have priority list starting in 2021-2022. The assessment work has been done. There is a need to move. I think we've had some speakers that have come and spoken to you about this morning. There is definitely some high community expectations there. Looking at the cycleway development, the cycle strategy is in place for Mercury Bay. It has been for a year or two. There's again significant community demand for this and an expectation in place. We're asking that we would add 29,000 to the 2021-2022 year and get these plans in place and just get this piece of work happening. Looking at footpath construction and streetlights improvements. There has been for both of these areas an annual budget for the wider Mercury Bay area in place over the recent years, and we are asking that funding move to the must-have priority list because we'd like to continue with the work programs that we have in place in both of these areas. Kaimurana Cemetery, stage 3. I think it's really important that we note that the existing Flaxmore Bay Cemetery is close to capacity. And we are asking that $118,000 move into the must-have priority list in the LTP. And this is to undertake detailed planning, design, and consenting work. The Whitianga Esplanade reclamation. The proposal for the redevelopment of the major boat ramp facility and associated services for our waterfront area. The fundamental driver for this piece of work is the need to deal with the significant health and safety and overuse issues that currently exist. Now, this is an area, the current wharf is it's shared by the ferry operator, recreational fishermen, commercial boats, tour boat operators. There's kids jumping and swimming, kids fishing, tourists just meandering around. It's a heavily used area. So we would like to see funding for this move to the priority list with $147,000 in 2021-2022. That's to just get the concept and planning in place for this piece of work to progress.
Big piece of work.
Huge piece of work, but much needed. The minor reserves project, again, this is an area where we've had an annual budget. We would like to see this be reverted from the nice to haves to the priorities, and we would like to keep the ongoing work with our reserves and our improvements. We'd like to just keep them going. Meriti Taia Mangakahia Reserve in Whangapoa. This work was initially included in the 2019-2020 annual plan. Unfortunately, the work was not completed due to a very lengthy consultation program and also because of COVID. There is a huge public expectation to get this work done, and it really needs to be finished. So we'd like to see that 345,000 added into the 2021-2022 plan. And we do have a CapEx item here which is not included in the must-haves or nice-to-haves, which is the wharikaho, waste, water services and water services. Now, I understand you've had people come and speak to you about this morning. The investigations are being carried out into the provision of water and wastewater for wharikaho. And there is a community expectation that the LTP will provide some funding for the implementation of the outcomes of those investigations. So we are asking it's not for next year, it's for 2024, 2025, 800,000. And then again, this work is something that will need to be completed. And that's my list. Not touch base on every item, but just a few ticket items. Questions?
So if I'm reading the graph correctly on page 119, that's 6.8 mil for a district rate increase. And 6.8 mil.
379 for 2021, 2022, because we've taken some projects out.
Generally, okay, so I'm just looking at this last list.
Oh, sorry, your next item, next list down. So that was for the district, and then for our
6.8 mil for district, and you've got 16.9 mil for local. My question is that you've identified 13.47 per rating unit. Is that just for district, or is that for local, or is that a mixture of the two? That's the two combined.
very good question. I'll quickly look. I think it's
Vickery Bay.
just Vickery Bay.
That figure at the bottom is just for the 21-22 financial year for the local rate only.
Correct. It's stated in this.
So it's 21-22 Vickery Bay local rate.
So that's just for the 1105.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you haven't extrapolated the district impact for, okay, over in out years for each year,
It's about $1 a person.
huh?
We're $1.60 a person on 379.
So, okay,
Are those,
that's half of what's identified as the total, but that's all right.
For those, so on the page above that 118, those red ones that are going out, are they, I mean, it's okay for them to go out?
Yeah, so some of them, so Flaxmore, we've had the groins installed.
That's assuming that the groins work and you don't have to.
Everything seems to be tracking that will be suffice, and that the wall that had been talked about is not needed.
So they're going out or going back, going in the program out for 10 years, or going out of the budget?
Going out of
Out
Out of the budget.
the budget.
the substantial means.
Is that okay to do that?
Yeah, I mean, great if we don't have to use them, so I'm backing the groins, 100%.
The groins, and they're working.
Yeah,
The research.
there's a justification to do it.
Yeah.
the locals.
Save money.
The locals did a good job in bringing focusing everybody's mind, you know, good on them.
Yeah, agreed.
In the face of considerable opposition from the regional towns.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the totals on 118, which is 6.8 million for district and 16.9 for local. So that's something that we'll have to consider as going forward. Not insubstantial, but actually when you start looking at per rating unit, 13.47, maybe.
And the growth of that is turning up
The growth.
and the rate generation from the growth at
Oh, gosh.
100 houses a year at least.
So obviously there'll be some impacts to the work program and making sure this fits in to be, get some work to be done there, I'm sure, down the track. If we
Absolutely,
get there.
yes. And as I said, we've given some and we've added some.
Any other questions, Rebecca?
Very Dutch answer.
Any other questions, Rebecca? Thank you, well done.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Right, we,
You can do a call out, but you haven't made himself.
sorry,
Shona, you can call out to see if she's come, but we hear that she has.
Shona Whittaker here?
No.
No. Andrew Watson, please, and Brendan Mitchell, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have copies of my submission here. Simon Watson, on my right is Quentin Mitchell. We are on the committee of the Hahei Water Supply Association. We own and manage the Hahei Road water supply. So my full submission is too long to go through. I'm just going to present a summary here. Firstly, the current situation. Both TCDC and our association draw their water from the Par Road bore field, which has insufficient capacity to meet summer demand without stringent water restrictions being imposed. Our supply does not comply with drinking water standards. It has a permanent boil water notice in place. In addition, although Hahei is a urban fire district, the capacity of none of the water supplies in Hahei meet firefighting requirements. The management of our supply by the 7 committee members is all done on a voluntary basis. Most of the committee are now in their 70s. At the end of the current LTP period, those of us that are now in their 70s will be in our 80s. Our association has been advocating since 2017 that TCDC should take ownership of our supply. The reasons are that we don't have the resources to operate the supply, would allow optimal production from the bore field, as well as ensure that we both supply our consumers with safer and more reliable supply. TCDC staff have clarified for us what is actually intended for water supply and Hahei in the draft LTP. The following are the must-dos under drinking water standards upgrades. Upgrading of the TCDC Hahei treatment plant and increasing its capacity to supply the whole of Hahei. Developing a new bore water source to supplement the current bore water source. As proposed in the 2018-2028 LTP, that's the last LTP, investigations for extending water and wastewater in Hahei were commenced, and a draft feasibility report was produced in April last year. This report was based on extending the TCDC water supply to cover the whole of Hahei, including our supply area. Secondly, I'd like to talk about what we are proposing here today. Assuming that the TCDC treatment plant upgrading and capacity increase proceeds, and if the groundwater investigations are successful, then Hahei will have a treatment plant designed for the whole community and the prospect of sufficient source water. But under the proposed LTP, most of the community will not be connected until beyond 2031, if at all. In this context, HWSA will be faced with difficult decisions. Do we upgrade our treatment plant to get us through to 2031 in the knowledge that there is a new compliant TCDC treatment plant already available? In our mind, it makes much more sense to use our own reserves to contribute to connecting our reticulation to the new TCDC plant and to supporting additional groundwater drilling. This would allow for a rational transition to the extended supply, including upgrading the Hahei Water Supply Association reticulation to provide firefighting capacity. We strongly believe that the investigations commenced in the last LTP need to be completed by bringing the water and wastewater feasibility report up to a standard that can be used to consult with the Hahei community. This will reveal what the Hahei community actually want and are prepared to pay for. While Council is rightly concerned about its budgets in these COVID times, without knowing what the community wants and is prepared to pay for, we don't believe the water supply extension in Hahei can be relegated to being a nice to have. In the immediate term, we would urge TCDC to take over facilities and operations, which would immediately provide more flexibility and maximum output during high demand times. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
If it was necessary, would you accept a targeted rate to expedite this utility service?
I can't answer for the community, but certainly the feedback we've had from our members, our 174 members, is that they are prepared to do what it takes to get a compliant supply.
Yeah, I don't blame them. Okay.
Any other questions?
I've just got a quick one here. It's the future of Three Waters and all that going on.
Yeah.
It's going to add another complex
I know.
to it all. So,
and it would be easy to push things out because of that, but in the fuller submission, you'll see that we argue that it's going to take some time for that to bed in, and for a small community like Hahei, it's going to take a long time to get to that point.
we're in
our 70s. We want to get on with our retirement.
Well, you look good.
Is that a question?
Hey, no intent meant other than a compliment.
It's noted.
It's the quality of water, I think.
Yeah, it's a quality. Well done,
Don't change the water, that's the boiler again.
Oh, dear.
Any further questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Tony Masters, please.
Try it.
Right.
So this is not what we found.
Okay, I'm representing the charter fishing operations that operate from the main wharf here.
Thank you.
I suppose we're just going to cut straight through the chase based on the submission. The general feeling around the way this has been handled by TCDC, in particular the latest request for submissions for the 5-day period, is pretty much what everybody backs up. That could have happened at least 30 days in advance. It's just backed a little bit of ill feeling amongst the operators, and of course we've seen a knee-jerk reaction. So with all due respect, you know, it's a big job, it's going to be a huge job, but we need a bit more time to get together, gel together as a unit and work with council, because at the moment nobody's interested. Okay, so first and foremost, so you know what's happened's happened. We definitely wouldn't want to see it happen again. I could go through all the submissions. At the end of the day, the general feeling is, if the infrastructure was there and everything was ready to go as per the plan, I don't think there'd be much of an issue. People having the rates increased. We know we've had it pretty sweet for the last, well, at least the last 6 years, from my perspective, and absolutely appreciate that. Yes, COVID has hit us pretty hard. There are going to be some operators moving on. There has been some startup operators, or people that were about to start up are now starting up elsewhere. So we just want more involvement and more say in how the program's going to run, basically. More involvement. And we need to work together, because at the moment, the way things are getting fired through emails, which is not the nicest way to do things, it's just not working. Not working from our perspective. And we know we need to work. We know it needs to happen. It needs to happen pretty quick. Look, that's all I want to say, guys. You know, we're dealing with people. Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, and we're dealing with people's livelihoods.
Thank you.
So,
Questions?
yeah, just one. Needs to happen real quick or put on the back burner?
Oh, no, it needs to happen real quick, but
Consultation needs to
consultation needs to
get underway.
There needs to be more communication.
Yeah.
Advanced communication.
Yeah.
Not 5 days notice on a Wednesday. Most of our operations operate Thursdays to Mondays, we're absolutely flat out. So just things like that. Yeah. Just those little niggly things that we need to sort out. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, very good. Brian Evanson.
Afternoon. I'm Brian Evanson. I'm here representing the Cape Cruiser, which I run as a business here from Whitianga. I just want to again reiterate what Tony said: lack of consultation or none. So at this stage, I strongly oppose the proposed fee, at least anyway, to take place at this 2021 period. And it's important to recognise that there needs to be time and there should be consultation review. So just a few reasons I had a bigger submission. I've sort of summarised a few things that I thought most important, but one was that TCDC has said that the ratepayers have said that it should be a user pay system. And I just think taken into account with that, it needs to be that all ratepayers contribute to the likes of pools, sport fields, all activities around the whole community. Often that a high percentage won't use, but we all pay towards it. And I feel that the war facilities also comes into that bracket in a big part of the community with fishing events, etc. So it certainly shouldn't be trying to gain huge amounts of more money from the operators that are using it just to cover all the expenses, I don't feel. The charter boat and tour operators often have visitors coming for day trips here. And I do know this for a fact because I'm running the tour boats. I often have people saying, we've just come down for the day. They come here for the day, they don't only do a boat tour. You know, they go and use the cafes, they look around the town, they spend other money here. So there is a benefit to the whole community in helping keeping these other businesses that are in Whitianga, you know, running and making it through the dry patches in the winter to make ends meet from those visitors that we are sometimes a sole part in drawing here, that help the community on a whole basis. So just a forecast that a couple of our operators have done. In my circumstances, I haven't actually run this business for many years. It's only been 2 years, but just based on this year's amount of passengers and touchdowns that I've done this year, I would be having to implement or taking on a 800% increase compared to what I've paid. And I also do agree that what we have paid in the past has been very reasonable, but that's a huge amount to then pass on to those tourists and visitors that could mean that there may be even less that come here because it's too expensive. We're not going to go and do a tour here because we'll go somewhere else and do it. One of the operators, other operators, just on their figures, which he's got a much higher turnover, he was looking at like a 2,500% increase in costs with the way the fees are looking at being implemented. That's not very sustainable. Around some of the charges, particularly when it comes to trying to get people to move on within a 30-minute slot by having a penalty clause in there. It's like once you go over 1 minute over 30 minutes, all of a sudden, bang, it's another $20. So in that scenario, you're going to end up having charter boats and operators trying to avoid those extra costs, and that could actually subject our industry to increased safety risks and cutting corners, trying to save money on costs. You just have not, in my, or in the tour boat side of things, I'm not speaking solely for fishing charters, but in my own business, I don't have time in 30 minutes to disembark passengers if I had, say goodbye to them, thank them, then look at cleaning and preparing the boat for the next trip, the next tour group arriving. If you have anybody that's differently abled, enabling and helping them to get onto vessels, and then needing to have a safety briefing, which is what you need to do for the maritime industry. You have to implement that before you leave the wharf. Now that's taking all that. That is without taking any account into any rest breaks, meal breaks, going to the restroom. to eliminate fatigue. So I believe that there's actually quite a lot of safety issue around putting that part of it into place. And I would hate to see any of the operators being subject to some incidents that have happened because of that. Just last thing is that in the long-term plan, it did state that they would be engaging with key parties, and it hasn't happened, and I think it is a must do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. Trevor Hildreth, is he here? Yes. You're next, sir. Hey? Welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Right, I'm here in regard to the upgrade of water main in Austin Drive. I live in Austin Drive, purchased the section knowing that there was no water in the street, built the house where we had to put in 2 water tanks to cover ourselves and also like a fire hydrant, so retaining half of 1 water tank for the fire service. That was 7 years ago. We are more than happy with the water service we've got from that, and since then there's the 11 of the 13 sections in the street are now built on, everyone having done the same. So we spent over 10 grand each basically putting our own water stuff in. So no one actually needs a water main upgrade. No one was consulted about it. I'd be interested to see, I mean, on my background's actually in corporate world, a lot of project management and multi-million-dollar projects, and one of the early stages is obviously a feasibility study and cost justification of what you're going to do. I'd be interested to see what sort of feasibility has been done on why would they spend over $2 million putting water into a street that doesn't need it and doesn't want it. So, just talking to the other neighbours in the street, to all the ones I've talked to, everyone was very surprised to see or hear it was even on the list to be done because no one had requested it. So unless there's some other reason why it's been put on the list other than to supposedly benefit the people in the street who don't want it, we're at a bit of a loss, and we hear that we're short of money in the council and we need money for things. So why would someone suggest spending over $2 million on a thing that's not even required?
Any questions?
Or anyone can explain why it's there.
No, we can't.
It's a good question, though. Very good.
So because you've raised that in your submission, that we answer that question during deliberations.
Yeah.
Okay.
We explore all those matters raised in our deliberations.
Yeah, I'm assuming someone within the council has put it there for some reason. So you'll try and find out why.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically what I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to Kath Wallace, who's on Teams.
Yes.
Right here. You might give her reminders.
Welcome. Floor is yours.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make submissions. I live on the east coast of the peninsula, and I guess what I was struck by in the consultation document was that there didn't seem to be any close alignment between what was suggested and what is the purpose of local government and the purpose of long-term plans, and the considerations that under various different sections have to be taken into account. And if we start with section 10 on the purpose of local government, and then the principles in section 14, and in fact the role of local government, and then the various requirements in a whole slew of different sections. I guess you know it, but I found it quite a maze. And we get into subpart 1, the purpose of local government. Sorry, I'm backtracking here. Provision for Maori input in section 14.1d, and also in 14h, the requirement in taking a sustainable development approach, a local authority should take into account social, economic and cultural well-beings, and the need in subsection 1 A1, social, economic and cultural well-beings and the need to maintain and enhance the quality of the environment, and to make provision for the reasonably foreseeable needs of future generations. There's an awful lot of roaring in the background. I'm finding it quite hard even to hear myself. Are people able to mute? What I'm saying essentially is that the long-term plan consultation form and submission form does not seem to meet the statutory requirement. And I should apologise that Barry Weaver wasn't able to join us because he's on a completely different. But what I'm seeing here is a set of particular projects and a discussion of the investments and the option of each particular project, but there's no reference to the purpose of the Act or purpose of local government, and there's no reference that I could see to pressing issues. Like, goodness, that's so noisy. Biodiversity protection and the biodiversity crisis. There's no discussion really of responding to climate destabilisation and sea level rise and the projects that might go with that. And also there's nothing really about decarbonising the economy and society, all of which should be part of the considerations. In my view, just reading the Act as a layperson, and there's, there is discussion of community hubs and so on, but there's no discussion of public transport. The energy, the proposal to have diesel backup for electricity needs seems really very early 20th century rather than early 21st century. And we don't see any discussion really of distributed energy generation, like people having their own
1 minute to go.
lead carbon batteries and so on. So I actually don't think that this consultation fulfills the requirements of the Act. Any questions?
Any questions? No, thank you.
Well, could I ask you a question? How do you address questions?
No, we will go through, we'll take your deliberations, we'll go through, and it'll be noted that you've questioned whether we're compliant with the Act, and that question will be asked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not coming.
We haven't been able to get a hold of her, Sandra.
So who,
All right, okay.
okay, I think we'll move on. Ken Coolham, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Righto, we got Ken Coolham.
We've got Tom Riddle here as well, and
I know, we've got others, so.
Well, would you rather go, Tom? Okay, right.
Is Tom Riddle with us?
Tom Riddle is,
Tony Fox knows what I'm on about.
yeah, this one, page 793.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, sorry.
You're not giving away money.
sorry, no, Harry. It's just 5 to 10 minutes away. We're just ringing Harry now.
Take one.
I'm just about to go.
There's two copies, Two pages, a folder for the, Google.
Thank you. Oh, see, maybe this is.
Yeah. So,
Floor's yours, Tom.
I'll just.
Yeah.
What page is this one on, Barry?
Page 793. Yep, 793.
Thank you. So Riddle, it's just both maps, that's what you're tabling today, these two things?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're talking about, I'm here to talk about water supply in the future for Whittihanger and surrounding area. And years ago, I spoke to Joan Gaskell about this. It's been going on for years, it's piecemeal, taking water from here and water from there.
And I said to Joan, I said, why aren't we building a dam and do it once and it's done? And we won't have to have a worry again. And I suggested to her the Copperway River, which is fairly well out of town, but it's in a position where water can be pumped from there across the Tairoa and Tawanui if need be. And it's gravity feed to town here. And not only that, where it is the very narrow gut in the river, and behind there's a huge sort of catchment area. There are a few properties that could be affected, depending on the height of the dam. But if you really wanted to get carried away, you could have a recreational lake. And that's just the theory I've come up with. And it's mainly forestry up there, and which could have an effect on the water quality through logging. But that's just a theory, because I've been for years, and I know you guys have been through it the last couple of summers, and it's ongoing. Hahei's having problems with water, and with a dam like that could feed Hahei and eventually Cook's Bench as the area grows. You're looking at 100, 200 years out to get a decent dam, you wouldn't have to worry again. But getting it through, I know, through all the hoops would be a major problem in landowners. But that's just, I just sort of present that to you. And
thank you.
whether it's worth looking at. And my motto is, if the job's worth doing, do it properly.
Good motto.
And that's how I look at things, because you round and round in circles otherwise.
Don't disagree with future proofing by the installation of a dam. Do you think even in a high drought situation that's going to protect us? Because look at what happened with the Hanua with Auckland.
Definitely.
Definitely what?
It'll keep the area going here adequately, yeah.
In a drought, high drought, yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't keep Auckland going.
I reckon it just about keep Auckland going up the Copperway. There's a dam there.
Are you saying it's a bigger and better than the Hanua?
I would say so, yeah, it could be.
Could be, right, yeah.
It depends on how high you want to make the dam.
Yeah.
Tom, would all that water come from the Pinnacles catchment down that way?
Yes, that's right.
That's where it comes, isn't it?
Yes.
So you've got a very high rainfall up the Pinnacles.
It's massive area.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge. But I'll just sort of pacify it.
Tom, have you considered 95% of the world does deep well bores? Have you considered a bore?
Yes, but I have the farm out here, and I put water bores down.
Yeah.
2 of them came up with high carbon
silica.
Carbon monoxide, no, dioxide. It was bubbling out of the ground. I couldn't use it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that around here, high iron content, which is costly to put through. And there's other problems too. I know some people have got sodium in their water. There's major, one farm here go vertical, well, the next one's got shopping water. Yeah, it's just terrible.
Better to have a dam.
Yeah, if you've got a dam, I know you'll have problems with wildlife and stuff like that.
There'll be a frog in there somewhere.
You've got a 10-year plan or something you can scratch your head and think about. I just think it overcome problems just like that if you can get it through.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that.
Is this the one that Lee was looking at?
Sorry?
Is that the one that Lee was looking at?
No. Okay, moving on. Richard Rowley.
I reckon your suggestion. I'm with you. I'll pass them over here. Here, Richard, thank you. Can we get him along?
Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I sent you a picture of it. I just sent you a picture and then I'll keep it tidy.
There you go, sir.
Thank you. Thanks very much. At the risk of being a grumpy old white man, I thought I'd come along.
There's a few of us.
I don't think you're as grumpy as I am some days.
Don't bet on it. Don't bet on it.
We have a grumpy Conti.
Yeah. And so I apologise initially for that. But I wanted to, because it's only for 5 minutes, I wanted to focus really on finances. It doesn't mean I'm not interested in anything else, it's just that I wanted to prioritise that. And you're an authorised taxation body, so you're collecting revenue from the community. And the criteria that I wanted us to talk about was the first issue for you guys is this year you're budgeting on getting $70 million from rates. And the plan suggests that we can't afford the infrastructure investment we need to make. A, because the ratepayers, a lot of them can't afford to pay more than they are paying. And B, because we only have a certain number of ratepayers. So the question for me is that the problem you guys have got, fortunately I don't have that problem, is how do you get equity into A, the collection of rates, and B, the spending of them. Equity between 40% of the ratepayers who don't live here but pay the full amount, and equity between the 7 communities, not to mention everyone else living in the rural sector. So I can appreciate that Richard Rowley doesn't have the answer. All I've got are the questions.
Excellent.
But I wanted to draw your attention to a few things, and I'm not going to read this out because I've given you a copy, but if I draw your attention to that graph on the first page, the message for me there is the Mercury Bay area is providing a significant proportion of your rate revenue compared with any other community.
Quite by ward, but at any rate.
Sorry?
Not quite by ward, but at any rate. The South East ward produces more, but that's fine.
South East ward, okay.
Moving right along.
Sorry?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what relevance that is.
Well, there's 4 wards in the Coromandel Peninsula.
Yeah.
So the South East ward is Tauraparanui, Whangamata 1.
This is his submission.
Yeah, no,
That's what the figures were just saying.
clarification. Yes. So they produce more money, but anyway, that's beside.
Well, the issue that I'm addressing is the equity between these communities, not between the wards.
Yep.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the Mercury Bay community, the Whangamata community are the 2 largest revenue places for the council. Not surprisingly, both of them are the 2 potential fastest growth areas. Whangamata's got some problems. They need a spatial plan, by the way.
Thank you.
Because
They're a waste of time and money, but we do them anyway because it's required.
right, they don't create demand, they manage demand, and that's what a spatial plan is. And the growth statement in the plan suggests that by doing a spatial plan in the Thames area, that's the council's answer to growth planning. And my view is that's not satisfactory, it's not enough. The clear demand is where people pay the most for property because they can't find any more property to buy, so the value of the property just keeps going up. And Whangamata is a really good example of that. House properties in Whangamata are far too expensive, but the reason is a lot of people want to go and live there for reasons unbeknown to me.
You'll have to keep it moving. You've used just about your time and we've got a lot to go.
So the first thing I wanted to say was this. The plan asserts that Thames is the district's key service town. And then we get a lot of talk about Thames, which I find quite divisive. And I think the council need to stop being divisive between the communities. We need to pull them together. Like, after all, they're a small community. The total area of TCDC population is small. And central government is going to either amalgamate you with someone else, or you're going to have to get your act together. It's as simple as that, as I see it. I don't want you to have to amalgamate with any of your geographical neighbours. Not sure what you guys think about that, but Auckland obviously is not a good option. But I do think we have to make the best of what we got, and being divisive between the 7 communities is really unhelpful. Part of my answer to the various questions you asked was that I don't think they're the right questions to ask everybody. Like the golf, I was here this morning for the submission on the golf course, which they don't want to talk about it as a golf course, it's a reserve opinion. You can achieve the outcome they want without having to buy the land, in my opinion. But the community, that community, has a bigger problem with sewage treatment. And who's going to pay for that? Like the Pawanua community paid for this. They also paid for the Tairua community sewage. But what's the policy? How do we get equity between these various communities? How do you determine whether we should sell the land in Whangamata? My view is you should sell some of Monk Street land that you've got land banked, because I don't think you need it. At least the current ratepayers don't need it. I don't think the council...
I'll give you about 30 seconds left, because I've given you an extra couple of minutes already.
Okay. So I think there's a big issue about equity between these areas, and I can't find a policy which sets out how you are going to determine how much money we should borrow as a general ratepayer group to fund individual community activity. I can't see a policy. And I would plead for a policy so that we can all have a transparent understanding of equity between these communities. I haven't got any more time.
Questions? No, I would have liked to listen to more.
Very good question, so.
Yeah, any questions?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Very good, no, happy with it.
Thank you. We'll read this with interest. Thank you.
Well, don't read these all first.
Harry Cowell, are you ready to go? Thank you.
Right, everybody. Right.
Welcome.
I just want to talk on 3 points. 2 of them I think are major and the other one's a bit less so now. But my major concern for the area, and I mean the whole of the Mercury Bay area, is water. And I think that's going to be our biggest problem. We've got a rapidly expanding population here. Was it 40% between the last 2 census in permanent population? And not to mention the amount of extra building that's going on. And the water supply is getting pretty dire. And the way it's supplied at the moment, coming just out of streams into a small amount of storage, isn't working. For instance, we get put onto water restrictions quite regularly in the summer. We actually aren't using anything like the amount of water that we're allowed to take. Nothing like. The restrictions come in at something like 1,500 cubits a day. In theory, we're supposed to be able to take 3,000. But the stream isn't big enough for that. The only time the stream actually produces enough water to do that is in the winter, in the summers when we need it. And I think the only answer to that is storage. And the council has got to get into producing or putting in more bulk storage, particularly for Whitianga. I mean, the problems here were far worse than we had. But Matarangi also gets used as a bit of a backup for providing Opito Bay, etc. And the local people there basically are losing faith because they see they get put on restrictions and then the water gets sold to elsewhere. And you're going to lose the whole community doing that. I think that's the biggest problem we've got in this area.
The second one was to do with rubbish and green waste and recycling. I think that basically, I know there's probably problems with contracts, but the easiest way to get rid of a lot of the problems we have, especially with the bag system, is bins. And if you've got big bins, you don't need to collect quite so often. It's much easier to run. But when it comes to green waste, if you centralise the green waste to Whitianga, which seemed to be the suggestion, you're going to get a lot of dumping. I mean, we see it now. People dump things like palm fronds and that sort of stuff because it can't go in the green waste, and it just gets tipped over the side of the road. And you end up as a council having to pay to pick it up. So you're wasting your time changing that. And the third one is obviously for me is the open space in Matarangi. You all know the history of it. It goes back a long way. Now, whether the initial screw-ups were to do with laziness or incompetence or, I don't know, maybe somebody was being paid off, who knows, but it's years ago and everybody has gone from that era, but it needs to be fixed. And the land that we're trying to protect 25 odd years ago was ruled in a court that it should be protected, and it never was. So that needs to be fixed. And the easiest way to fix it, and again, to get the community on side, they basically aren't going to get behind the council owning that land because they don't see the council as having been trustworthy in the past. And to put it in to local ownership as a community, so we can then put in a submission to have it as open space in perpetuity to save it. And that's really what we're after. And the community feels very strongly about it. So the various questions that you put in there, I don't think were right. You put in that the council's to buy the land. I don't think that's right. And in fact, I don't think the owners would sell it to you. Yeah. I think the owners would sell it to the community. I don't think they'd sell it to the council.
Questions of Harry? No, we've canvassed the land issue pretty well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input.
Thank you.
June Bennett. Please. Page 803.
Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors. I've been on the other side of that before today. Right, I'm going to start first. Okay, infrastructure strategy. The development contributions changes for Whitianga have decreased 2021-2022. With inflation and 10 years out to the future, shouldn't we be looking at a far stronger situation for that area? Because I don't think we've been given sufficient funding for adequate infrastructure. And Mercury Bay is projected to experience the greatest growth in population too, so that's the other thing. But I'm very aware that this is a 10-year out future plan, so not just now, but in the future. So, but I hope that Whitianga and Mercury Bay, along with the rest of the eastern seaboard, with a high volume of new builds, that our infrastructure will be given greater consideration by council to address these issues of strong growth now and in the long term. And furthermore, with our large Whitianga Waterways Canal development, all of this is putting high pressure on our infrastructure requirements, and this requires greater consideration to continue, as the late Joan Gaskell argued for, to bring more work, services, facilities, which will and has brought more young families, young people to balance a largely older population. Hopper's development has enabled this area to bring in people and their expertise to create a great lifestyle and facilities which will benefit everyone with a positive outcome now and into the future. Queensland, Australia is still involved with canal construction and Caloundra lifestyle. I do not believe that this is creating any damage for our environment either. However, we're up against all the inefficiencies of the Resource Management Act and its planning systems. So it remains to be seen if the new acts proposed are going to improve the situation. Now I'm on to rubbish and recycling, which is page 22, issue number 5. After further research and inquiries, I've completely changed my mind on this issue. And after speaking with Graham Christian from Smart Environmental Perspective, who says, quote, even though more wheelie bins will take away some work and funds from them, in the long term, it will be more cost effective to have a uniform service right across our whole district. I am further convinced that this is a way forward after watching the project on TV3 Thursday the 29th and hearing the health and safety issues with blue bags and curbside bags. And the government are also concerned for the environmental issues associated with this. So, and I would say with the Mollocks too, probably it'd be a good idea to have these wheelie bins all with different labels on them so they can put all their bottles and everything else in, you know, each one, rather than have one big Mollock situation. So whether that would work out, I don't know, but I'm looking at that one. The cost of wheelie bins for those on restricted incomes are a bit of a worry. And maybe council could look at what Waikato Regional Council are doing with their sustainable home scheme to help those who can't afford the initial cost of buying them. Whether that is a, hang on, I don't know. But I am advocating again for the new Trust Community Operated Resource Recovery Centre, Seagull Centre. I'd love to see more of those around. And even more so after having to take perfectly good articles of furniture to the dump recently. Whitianga requires the centre to alleviate fly dumping and landfill as soon as, and good to see in the news from council that work with this is underway. Yeah, I was really pleased about that. Now, fees and charges for car parking. If these are going to be increased, I would not agree with a large increase that could affect some businesses. However, I do agree with ratepayers not having to fund the cost of amenities and services for businesses, as our rates are expensive enough now. Harbour facilities, fees and charges, boat trailer parking charges, $200 for an annual permit to park a boat trailer is excessive. And if there's to be an increase, it should be gradual and not as much as that. As I said, there are some boat ramps which are not monitored enough to keep them clear of debris and slime, which can be very dangerous, especially after rain. Now, water supply issues. I congratulate the council and mayor to investigate a new water source to meet the future growth in Whitianga. I would like to see council-owned land behind Moai.
About 1 minute, June. 1 minute.
Okay, 63 hectares. There's a Moai water catchment through investigation for this one. Now, the tsunami sirens. Further to this, as a past community board member, I remember attending a council workshop where environmental specialists explained the dangers of significant earthquakes, especially in the Kermadec Trench fault line. Now, I understand from research done by Linda Shimodley-Smith that technology for these has been replaced with sirens and able to get through double glazing, and now with security cameras, much less expensive to install. So I would say that this is a very important safety issue in which council did not consult the residents' ratepayers on. And I refer you to the Local Government Act, Community Views in Relation to Decisions. Moreover, technology of cell phone coverage alone is not good enough, as not only do many not turn off their phones at night, also a very significant earthquake or huge weather event, they cannot be charged with power failure either.
Righto, questions of June.
So
Do you want to table your document?
Yes, I can do that. I've got
Thanks,
one
June.
that I can table for you.
That's great, thanks, John.
Thank you.
That's all right. I hope I gave it.
He's been waiting there quietly and silently, so we're going to take Ken next.
Yes, they're very well.
Ken Coolin, page 437.
Thank you,
June.
That's all right, okay.
Thanks, Jane.
That's all right.
437.
Good afternoon, your worship and councillors. And this afternoon I'm speaking on behalf of the Whangamata Community Board, for which I'm the board chair. And I'm not going to read the whole submission you have it in front of you, so I'll just highlight some of the key points so we can hear it over the drilling going on. So I'll start with the community, Whangamata Community Pool. And the board is supporting option 1, which is a grant of 333,000, but would ask that it be spread over 2 years. This is to spread the rating impact because it's a grant, it's not a council facility, so it can't be loan funded. So we have to take it as a hit. But rather than in 1 year, we prefer over 2 years. And realistically, the construction's probably going to be over more than 1 year anyway. So if there are different components, if it can be spread over the 2 years, then the rating impact won't, it will have to be 1 year and then dropping down, it'll be a little bit more gradual. I should just add that some of the board members actually would favour option 2, which is the 500,000, once again spread over 2 years. And I see that there are a number of submissions from the community that are of the same thinking. So in summary, probably the board would be comfortable with either option 1 or 2, but certainly not option 3. The work needs to be done to make the pool viable going forward. It's a great asset for the town, but it does need work to keep it going. So 1 or 2, the board's official position is 1. Moving on to sale of 101 Lindsay Road, and I'm sure you've already heard submitters on this, or you will be hearing them to come, but from reading the submissions, it appears there's strong opposition for the sale of the land within the Whangamata community. It's pleasing to see submitters from other parts of the district also supporting its retention. It was disappointing to see the lack of information within the consultation document. It was a one-pager. Other issues had a lot more to them. And option 3 talked about investigating possible community uses. So if you weren't local, you didn't know what those community uses were, you'd be, what the hell does that mean? I don't think there's any need for investigation as mentioned there. The community uses have been well canvassed and they just haven't been spelled out there. So the board's position is actually a variation on option 3. We would like to see a hiatus of 5 years or up to 5 years to give the community groups the opportunity to raise the funds to build the hub. So they won't be asking for council funding, they'll be going out trying to seek external funding, and they're confident that can be done, but they can't do that until there's some certainty regarding the land at the end of it. So at the moment, they haven't been able to go to the various sources that they've got confidence that they can approach. So if they're able to do that and raise the funds within the 5 years, what we'd end up with is a hub which would accrue community benefits, and it'd be a great outcome both for the council and the community. Just throw it in there, there'd also be potential benefits for the district because we would have a community marae there which would be available for school groups from right across the district to do school visits and come and visit our great town. So at the end of the 5 years, if the fundraising has not been achieved, then at that point in time, I'd say, okay, back to the council, you can revisit what you want to do with the land. If they can't do it within 5 years, they're probably going to never get there. So the land's been sitting there for many years, not a lot happening. If you've visited the site, there's a work site there, there's a bit of BMX from time to time and a few plants growing there, but it's been there for many years. So another 5 years isn't going to be, I don't think it'll be detrimental to the council. I'm just really saying, please don't sell the family silver. Moving on to summertime rubbish collection. The board supports a reduction of the summer collection because we recognise that over the holiday period, as you get into January, the demand drops away. People have the opportunity for collection 3 times a week, but most only do it twice a week or less frequently as you get through January. But the period between Boxing Day and the first weekend in January is absolutely frantic. And there are bottles everywhere. Some of them get used for all purposes if they're left out. And people, if they weren't able to put them out in their blue bins, they put them out in cartons and they don't get picked up, so we have real issues. But because this is my personal view only, I would like to see the 3 times a week retained for that fortnight, and then at the end of that fortnight drop away to 2 times a week till the beginning of February, rather than cutting it right off, because I don't know what they come to town, they must be really thirsty, but they get through a mountain of bottles. Not the locals, of course, we
Just a point of order there.
Yeah.
What are you saying on behalf of the community board?
Well, the community board, because we were looking at the options that were there on the paper, was either retain it fully or reduce. I'm just expressing now a personal view, just putting it out there.
Can't do that.
Well, I've done it, so sorry. I'll withdraw those comments if they're inappropriate.
No, it's just a shame that the community board didn't realise they could have put up another option altogether.
Yeah, okay. No, fair point. Now, turning to the CapEx and OpEx budgets, it's pleasing to see there's funding in there for stormwater improvements, but it's in the second half of the plan and it won't actually be finished until 2031. So the towns, parts of the town are very low lying. There's been flooding from time to time with quite a few properties having water inundation. But for a lot of the town, there's no stormwater system in place. That's in spite of paying full stormwater rates. So what we're asking for is the project be brought forward rather than waiting until the end of the plan. And ideally, if it could start in year one, that would be brilliant. But they've been paying the stormwater rate for a long time. There's some sort of intervention there. Now, in our submission, there's a number of nice to have local projects. These are to be funded locally, and their numbers 3 to 11. We'd like to have them reinstated either in year one or in later years, depending on the affordability. Well, some of these are new. Some of them are actually things that have been there for many years and have been removed really without any board input. Just by way of example, we've always had a modest street light improvement budget, and the residents are constantly asking for better street lighting in parts of town. And a lot of the town doesn't have footpaths on either side of the road, some have it on one side. So when you have no footpaths, poor lighting, it's a dangerous situation. So what we're asking for is, say, 45,000 to be reinstated. It's funded locally. It will allow the board to actually look at the community priorities and see where we're able to make them. And then every year we'll do one more. We'd like to do the whole town, but that's not affordable. So if we have some of these annual budgets put back in to be funded locally, then it allows us to meet some of those community needs. There's some new items there, items 12 to 16, and we'd like these to be considered for inclusion. Just one I'll just talk on. There was mentioned earlier about spatial plans and whether they're worth the paper they're written on. But in our community, we have a real problem with affordable housing and for permanent rental accommodation. We've got a number of people who want to live in town and work. They have jobs, but they're coming from Waihi or Whiratawa or wherever because they can't get accommodation in town. It's a bit ironic when half the houses in town are vacant at any one time. There's just no housing. So what we really want to do is identify within the area where there's potential for growth and where housing might be a possibility. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but to have something so going forward there can be some growth in housing, because otherwise all we're going to do is end up with more and more vacant homes. They go on the market, people pay silly prices. They're not locals who are in employment, they're people that use them as holiday, and that's their right, but it just means that we're not addressing that problem of local housing for people who want to live there locally. So I haven't used up all my time, but happy to answer any questions.
So I've got a question. So essentially you just want to rezone so you can get on with it without having to do all that other palaver that costs a lot of time and money.
Well, I'm not sure how much that palaver costs, but
quite a bit.
Yeah, we want to make sure the rezoning is done in the right areas and gets the right outcomes. But whatever that takes, whether it's a spatial plan, whatever, we do need to identify that land. Yeah.
Don't disagree.
Thank you. That's good. Really good.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Stevens.
Who we have to?
Page.
Bromman Blake? No?
At page 820.
820.
Yeah, Robert Stevens.
Oh, Robert Stevens.
Yeah, St. Bob, which I'm known as Bob, but legally I'm Robert. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for your time and giving me to speak to my commission. I'm part of that group in Matarangi. I'm a member of the Matarangi ratepayers, who are all very keen for what they presented to you. However, I feel that that doesn't represent the community entirely. There's probably 200 properties represented by the Matarangi ratepayers, whereas there's 1,600 roughly sections. Now, I know a lot of people that come down for maybe 20 weekends of the year and a couple of weeks in the summer that know absolutely nothing about this. You talk to them, one good friend said, well, Bob, we rely on you to tell us what's going on down there. And I asked if they made a submission. No. And you hear the scuttlebutt going on. There's a lot of resistance to being charged an extra portion on the rates. I think that the owners of property at Matarangi deserve to be consulted. I know you're saying, okay, this is a 10-year plan, people should be watching out if they can have a chance to make a written submission, but not everybody wants to make or even knows about making written submissions. How about a referendum, or the council sends out letters to every property owner and speaks about what is going on? The people don't know. The majority of people, I would say, do not know. Now, what option was I going to put in for? I really didn't know, because the biggest bone of contention I have with council or past council members is what's happened to lose the rights to the spit end of the golf course. I first was brought to Matarangi by a fellow called Ken Woodhead. He was, I think, the original developer, at least he told me he was. And he knew that I'd been involved in golf course construction in North America, so he said, would I go down and have a look at it? I thought the place was only perfect. He asked me, would I be interested in a job, but I had a number of years work ahead of me in Canada. What would he do? I told him to talk to Paul Gleason, who was the agent for Martin McCormick, who in turn was the agent for Alan Palmer, Bob Charles, and all these guys. I said, look, Bob Charles has got the best name in golf in the country. Get him in. Now, I've sent you as a drawing, the old drawings of Bob Charles's, the chap that drew them up was Murmura. But that's the old drawing of the golf course as it was planned originally. But the spit end is a mighty precious piece of golfing country. And, you know, the people, I first got involved with the messiness of what was going on with the then owners of the property at Rangi Beach Stage, Hutching and Watson, over what they did. I bought a piece of property, the title hadn't come through. They switched everything around. The golf course no longer was changed to where it is now, more the holes. But in order to change those holes down the spit end, they signed an encumbrance to council. Council never saw that that was registered for 6 or 7 years after. They were then second in line to the HSBC Bank. Matarangi Beach Estates went bung. There's some correspondence I just popped in there about 1:30, and you can see the top part there acknowledges, your solicitor has acknowledged that indeed there is no encumbrance, there is no need to have for the golf course to provide a right of a walkway. Yep. Big one?
Got about a minute left.
Okay, right. Well, I think that the council should at least offer the owners to purchase or reimburse or get back the rights that council had before they didn't act. And I haven't put in what option I want, because I really think there's no question of council should at least be offering on that part of the golf course to do something, provide some relief to the residents. They no longer have a right to walk around. And if you said that to the people who aren't golfers, the ones that don't know anything about making submissions, then they would be mighty upset if you told them they could no longer walk around that spit. And I mean, it's in the tourist papers. You can see it, and people come from outside of the area just to walk around there. It's a wonderful walk, and you've lost it.
You talking about this one? Or that
I'm
one?
talking about that, yeah, that one. Now, okay, speaking to the holes 1 and 2, they encroach into the beachfront, and they were supposed to be part of the original encumbrance. They never got in for some reason. I was a member of the old organization before the Matarangi ratepayers, and I mean, I can't believe the mess that has been left behind for some time. And I think you really should get in and clear that up. Never mind the options to purchase. Let the owners, we'll say 1,000 owners that don't know anything about, or not maybe know anything, but aren't part of this. Notify them, get their opinion on it. I think you're jumping the gun here. At least you're not. I mean, the submission's been made by the Matarangi residents and ratepayers. But I think it should be looked on as a whole, what you've lost and how you've upset the residents.
So I'm seeing a couple of parts to this. One, so I just want you to clarify me. One is the encumbrance.
Yeah.
To protect it as open space, which can be just a condition on the title, which the owners can do right now. Is that correct?
Well, the encumbrance would have to be drawn up again, would it not?
Why not? They can, as the owners, they could put a covenant on the title, call it whatever you want. As owners, they can put any condition on the title.
I'm sure they could, but I'm not acting for the owners. But
no, but I'm saying there's that deals with the encumbrance or the protection matter.
Yes, but you've lost the right. You've lost the right to the walkway.
Okay, because it's in private hands.
It's in private hands.
Right, okay. So
you've lost the right, if it's no longer a golf course, for the council just to get land back.
So then the question is about just purchasing the walkway. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'd say it probably should be offering. I don't know if the owners would want to sell it to you, but I think it should be, you should make them an offer based on this whole thing that the Matarangi ratepayers are trying to ask about you purchasing and, or us having to contribute extra to the rates. I don't like that when actually you've lost it, and I shouldn't be having to pay that amount of money. It should be probably maybe half to 1 to 2/3 if you took back what you already had but lost through inadvertently not seeing that the encumbrance was registered for 6 years.
By not registering the encumbrance.
I'll tell you what happened. And these guys were pretty smart. They were then able to borrow, if there'd been encumbrance on the title. Now it wasn't done.
Make you see Hong Kong showing on the bank.
So and now I've given you the correspondence that's just become active in the last couple of weeks. And your own solicitor right here has said, no need, the owners don't have any obligation. You had something very good, you've lost it. I want to know what you're going to do about it.
So you're saying that your council should purchase that back, Robert?
Certainly do some negotiating with the current owner.
So who is going to pay at the end of the day for that purchase if we do it?
Well, that's why I put in option 3, but I feel, option 3 is the whole of the community, the whole of
the district.
The whole of the district. Yeah. But when I say you guys, I know you weren't the council at that time, but it happened. It happened under the auspices of the Thames-Coromandel District Council. So what are you going to do?
Good question. I've got to wrestle with it.
So
Any other questions?
firstly, we'll explore the legalities, I would suggest,
Sorry?
the legal paper trail.
Well, first, is there a legal opinion from your own solicitor right there?
That's only the current.
Jamie is not our solicitor.
No, it's okay, it's all right.
Sorry? Okay, he's not.
I just got a question, if I may ask. We've had obviously some speakers for the support of getting a covenants over it and a targeted rate for the community to pay for it. What's your opinion about
Well, look, I'd like to know what the targeted rate is going to give me. I think it should be the whole of the ratepayers, not a small group. I was on that committee for 19 years. I thought the golf course was safe, so I thought I'm out of it. Yeah. But now there's other things going on, which I think the whole of Matarangi should be aware, not just 200 owners.
Right, the whole thing. Yep, thank you.
Right.
All right?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that, Bob.
Thank you. Anne Ward. Hi, welcome.
Hello. You ready?
Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you. Sorry, I haven't done this before, so.
Just relax, we're all relaxed.
Yeah. Right, so my name is Anne Ward. I am the business administrator or financial controller of Marine Adventures Limited. Okay, so together with my partner John Elwood, we own and operate the Y, doing overnight fishing and diving charters out of Whitianga here. John is the company director. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us here today because he's out fishing with, I would like to point out, 10 Whitianga residents, so locals. We have owned and operated the Y since 2004 when we bought the vessel from John's parents, Mick and Dulcie Elwood. They purchased the boat from Peter Spurdle in the 1970s, and the boat has been a wharf user since this time, which is, it's now 50 years that the boat's been here operating as a chartered vessel. And as far as we are aware, we've paid wharfage all this time. I'll also let you know that I have made an Official Information Act request relating to the decision making around the fee schedule. So I just thought I'd put that out there to you. Right. We believe that the Council's intention to consult with the users as outlined in the long-term plan and as discussed on the 18th of December 2018 meeting has not occurred. The significant changes, such as the increase in fees, are not projections as suggested by the long-term plan, but are already prepared for implementation as set out in the proposed schedule of fees. Just a bit concerned about the contradiction there. In 2011, we completed an interim application form requesting to operate from the Whitianga Wharf. It states on the bottom of the form that early in 2012, Council will move to a more formal permit process. As this never happened, I am assuming that we still have an agreement with the Council and therefore should have expected proper notice of intention to change the current fees. We appreciate the Council has attempted to collect data as to who is using the wharf over the last summer. However, does this include those that start before and or finish after the wharf warden finishes work? Therefore, do you know how much revenue you should be receiving from the current users? And I can tell you now, I know of several operators that work from the wharf that aren't paying wharfage, and one of them for many years. They've both put in submissions, so hopefully they've been honest. The huge increase, which I know you've heard from other operators, how much of an increase it is for most of us, is not possible to pass on to our clients until August next year, as we are fully booked at the current price. So we have to advertise this way in advance because we just book so far in advance. This is an expense that we haven't budgeted for, and we, like many, have been affected by several lockdowns. Okay, one that affected us directly, but when Auckland goes into lockdown, of course, they can't come into our fishing charters. And they've all been in our busy season, as would be the case when we, like everyone, do not know what's going to happen in the future. At present, we are arguably the busiest fishing charter boat in New Zealand. And this is something that Whirianga should be proud of. A lot of our appeal to new clients is that we are cheaper than the Bay of Islands, Tutukaka, Whakatane, Tauranga. We may lose this business with a huge price increase. Our clients spend a good deal of money here on food, accommodation, fishing and diving gear, fuel and gifts for their loved ones back home. There are very few businesses in Whirianga that do not benefit from our clientele. We cannot agree with the application fee, passenger fee, recreational vessel launching fee, daily fee or maintenance berthage fee without knowing what they're about. The vessel touchdown fee encourages all users to operate unsafely by encouraging us to hurry. In the minutes of the 2018 meeting, it is recorded that Jan Vanderveld noted the need to manage what is currently in place with all parties, both recreational and commercial, and reiterated the need to be safe and realistic. We don't believe this is being covered with the current pricing. What is the purpose of this fee? Is it to reduce congestion, or is it for the revenue, or is there another reason that we're not aware of? The congestion issue is not valid in our opinion, as boats and skippers are very good at working in with each other. Adding a fee may only create unnecessary tension, especially with the commercial fleet unable to incorporate the fee increase and with the increased pedestrian traffic on the wharf. I'm sure you're all aware it can be absolute chaos down there in the middle of the summer. How do you propose to police the wharf and collect fees due? Will you be employing someone to administer the wharf fees and usage? And does this seem a good use of the revenue collected? We believe the 0.6% for wharf facilities in our current rates remains, as most of the community use the wharf at some stage, even if it's for sitting and watching the world go by.
Okay, questions?
Oh, can I cover two more little bits?
Be very quick then.
I will be. We accept that a rate increase is well overdue, and we would like to see a system, either a flat annual rate or a daily rate with additional charges for maintenance and overnight stays. We see that it is requiring less administrative costs and allowing for the additional revenue generated to be used for wharf maintenance and repairs. And I believe that the current bylaw allows for that.
Questions? I've got one question. Did I hear the date 2012 was when you had a letter? Yeah, I thought it was about that long.
2011, yeah.
That was about when, yeah, thank you.
Your memory's not that bad.
Very significant. Thank you very much.
All right. I've got some copies of my written submission and my oral submission here, because I'm aware that my written one didn't come out very well.
The formatting was a little challenging.
Yeah.
We just persisted.
Do you want copies of the 2011?
Why not?
Why not?
And you don't need that. You might need that one as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Bronwyn Blake is not submitting, she's not arriving, and Maggie Johnson is not arriving. So that is that completes our submissions, folks. Now, we need a motion.
They're saying all we need to do is adjourn until tomorrow. So if you'd like to do that.
Maybe adjourn until tomorrow.
Do you want to do that motion?
Yeah, let's
Martin's
do it.
moving that We adjourn till tomorrow morning at 9 AM in Thames. And I'll second that. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Yeah. Don't need you.